Hey, wise parents, Tina Parrish here. I just got done teaching a class, an online class out of my living room. I'm usually on my way to a class or starting a class. Just to give you a snapshot of what my lifestyle is like. I had your girls this week for 5, 6, and I was able to bring my curriculum this week focused on one of our core foundations, which is nutrition for life. So our check-in question was, what is something about food that you wish was true? As you can imagine, one of them is, I wish sugar was good for me, right? I wish candy was good for me and I could eat unlimited amounts of it. Also, that I wish some of the healthier foods, I didn't like the way they tasted. I wish I liked them, so I would eat them more. And even another wish was, I wish those magical foods at Disney, like a magical apple, like really held magic. And I found that really interesting because I feel that way too about foods. Like, I wish like this mushroom coffee that I had like was magical, was a magical supplement. You know, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And that's the thing, like, what are the truths and lives of food? And that was kind of what we focused on. So our first activity was some truths about food. And so I had the girls each choose one. And then they partnered with somebody, so they had 2 truths, and they got to share those 2 truths, but together they had to come up with a lie. So here's some of the truths about food. I'll read a couple to you. A recent study found that a messy kitchen causes people to eat more. That's the truth. The same ingredient used in ranch dressing to make it whiter is used in sunscreens and paint. Wow, that's fascinating, huh? And another truth is nutritious food costs up to 10 times more than junk food. Yeah, these are all true. So they had to come up with a lie. And as you can imagine, like, it was kind of difficult for them to decipher the truth from the lie. And ain't that the truth when it comes to food? So at that moment, I was like, turn off the lights, get under the table. And I grabbed my flashlight and I said, gang, this is the truth. And the truth can shine really, really bright. But what happens is that biases come in. And then the truth has a really hard time of coming through. Just limited amounts come through it. And that's kind of like what our food industry and our food policies are like. Our snack picked one of the most controversial, misunderstood foods, and that was butter. Every girl was given a tablespoon of Kerrygold grass-fed butter, and they were given their own little cutting board and fresh herbs that I had them identify, and plenty of vegetables, and they were to create like a spring scene. So what that could look like is using the butter as like petals on a flower. I actually had one girl create, and this is genius because that's such a beautiful gold color or yellow color for the butter. She created a duck out of it and had, accompanying foods around that butter and just a little bit of salt on it. So everything in moderation, and that was kind of the lesson. So here's what we need to know as parents, about kind of food truths and food lies, and especially let's take the approach of butter, right? Again, misunderstood controversy about butter. So there were some studies done quite some time ago that specifically linked the saturated fat, which is true, it is in butter and it is in animal protein, specifically linking that to causing high levels of cholesterol. So here's what we need to know about studies, and this is sort of like my BA in journalism kind of coming in, is always when there's a study, we have to understand, like, what's the funding? Who's funding the study? And what is the full spectrum profile, like, of the participants in the study? Were these healthy participants? Were these potentially non-healthy, maybe smoking, non-exercising participants? And what is the outcome that the study, people behind the study, whether it's a company or a non-affiliated group, wanting to find out about this study? And that can swing biases towards finding particular information. And once it like lodges on, we have a hard time as humans letting it go. I don't know if you can kind of reflect back to when we felt that fat was bad in food in the early 80s, and we took it out and instead stuck in sugar, right? And sugar is the culprit, is the one that we really want to watch out for. Other studies have been done that show that butter has high levels of linoleic acid. Linoleic acid is actually good for us. Linoleic acid is actually a cancer-fighting property. So where to find my information? I reviewed all this with a client I have that's a retired MD. I also trust a lot of Dr. Mike Hyman. He's an MD and also a functional medicine practitioner who has of late been lobbying a lot with Congress about food laws. especially for children. Changing some information about not being so deceitful. So he's for good. Also PubMed. You know, anything, PubMed is free. I go on there, I kind of type information, I come up with studies, and I look a little bit about, you know, the participants of the study, what the study was about. So you don't have time for all that, right? But you do have time for common sense. And so here's what I recommend that you can do with all this information. So yes, saturated fat, we definitely want to limit, whether it's like in butter or whether it's in coconut milk. We want to limit it. Some alternatives to butter would be oils, but what kind of oils? So I kind of challenge you, and even doing this with your daughter, is going through food items in your house, like chips are good for this, and also salad dressings, and trying to find out what kind of oil is being used. Want to ditch the vegetable oils, including the canola oil. And the reason that manufacturers use them, as you might know, is because they have a longer shelf life than, say, what I recommend is like avocado oil, and I recommend, yes, coconut oil, and I do recommend cold pressed extra virgin olive oil. These have these healthy omega-3s in them. Some of the alternative butter products are going to have omega-6s. We don't need more of those omega-6s. We need the omega-3s. And even ceramic nonstick pans, like those are excellent too. You don't need a conduit. You don't need oils for that. You can actually cook a fried egg right on them. To support local, well, you don't have to purchase anything at Rusty Hinge's Ranch. This is a ranch in our town. Go online and type in olive oil dressings, right? So you can come up with some alternatives, some simple things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. If you're switching from grass-fed or switching from a pasture-raised butter into a grass-fed butter, I just did a price check at Trader Joe's. Kerrygold is about 50 cents more than, say, the Trader Joe's non-pasture-raised butter. So there you go, right? It's a confusing world when it comes to food. What we can do is we can empower our girls with ask questions, look at information, find out what this means. They're wonderful, and they're wonderful to each other. And this is like ideally what Sierra and I want, is like the small group formation where, you know, we can provide the information, but they work with the information with each other in a lot of different ways. And that's what makes it so special. And that's what makes like wise girls. And don't we all wish like we had this kind of education growing up? And it's so great that you're giving it to your daughters. And this is what it's all about. It's all about the exposure to this kind of information. So thank you for everything. Thank you for you being you. And I appreciate each one of your girls. See you next time.